A warm welcome to everyone from Excel and Excel. Hope you all are safe and doing well. Thank you all for enrolling in this event. Excel and Excel welcomes you all. Our today's session is about extending the Power Query joins by simulating fuzzy matching by Mr. Gasper Kamensek, who is right here with us. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and we are really glad to have you on our show.
Glad to hear that.
So
Looking forward to it.
before I hand over the session to you, sir, I would like to give a quick introduction about Excel and Excel. Excel and Excel is a data analytics firm that solves high impact business problem using data and technology. We provide end-to-end services in the field of data analytics and data visualization. Our core services include analytics, consulting, and training. As you all are really aware that we run the popular talk show EiEFreshTalk on our YouTube channel, where we host great leaders and subject matter experts from various fields, speaking on topics ranging from Excel to analytics and finance to financial modeling. So some of our past events are data transformation using Power Query, time automation and uh, time for automation, Power Query and Power Automate by Mr. Faraz Sheikh, Power Query Excel Tips and Tricks by Mr. Bob Amlas, and Google Sheet plus Power Query for report automation in Excel and Power BI by Mr. Michael Olafusi. We are really happy to share that our website, hashtag EIE Fresh Talk by Excel and Excel, has been selected as one of the top 5 Excel podcasts by feedspot.com. So let me introduce you to our speaker for the day, Mr. Gasper Kamensek. Mr. Gasper is a Microsoft MVP for Excel since 2016. He is a trainer, consultant at Excel Olympics. Mr. Gasper Kamensek is a lead author at excelunplugged.com, one of the top 40 blogs for Excel worldwide, with over 250,000 visitors annually. He has been a speaker at 60 plus conferences and a trainer with 1,000 plus courses and 7,000 plus attendees. In addition to providing training and speaking at conferences, he travels the world spreading the love for Excel and Power BI. We are really glad to have you on our show, sir, and we welcome you. I also request the participant to welcome our today's speaker with a hi in the chat section. Over to you, sir.
Okay, well, thank you. So let me just see if everything is working on my part. Now you can see me.
Yes, sir.
And now I'll just try to share my screen to see if that works. There it is.
Yeah, we can see it.
Cool. Okay, so we're all set. Okay, so a big hello to everyone joining us. So this will be a sort of deep dive into like a piece of code in M or in Power Query, but a very powerful piece of code that that is not, one of those that you can find from the user interface, which is rare in Power Query because user interface is mostly what you click. So we're going to do this. The session will go like this. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to introduce myself, and then we're going to go into more or less live demos, but starting with kind of a overview of what it is that we're talking about, because the title may be misleading or may not be understood quite correctly, although the description was spot on. So without further ado, my name is Gasper Kamensek. I come from Slovenia, which is the only country in the world that has the word love in the name. And I mostly do trainings. I love trainings, although with the current situation as is, and trainings moving online, which I'm not such a big fan of as I am in for trainings, live. So at this point, I mostly do consulting. I mostly do Power BI and Excel projects. And most of those, include Power Query. So Power Query is almost daily, or not almost, it is daily part of my, workflow, part of what I do. And most of what I'll be talking about today actually comes from certain projects I did and certain elements of those projects that required me to think kind of outside the box. And you'll see what I mean by that later. And as it was previously stated, I'm an Excel MVP. And I also have a blog. It's called Excel Unplugged, and you're welcome to read through it. There's a lot of content there about Power Query, which I love, and you can read about it over there. Okay, so this is all the PowerPoint that you're going to see. From here on out, it's going to be more or less demos. But as I said, to start off, let's talk about what, before we, give the solution, let's create a problem, or let's talk about what we're actually doing here. So the title goes like simulating, fuzzy matching by using Power Query, which is also kind of part of the join session, the join experience in Power Query. And let's just talk about, so what is the join experience and what is fuzzy matching? So let's talk about that. And the idea of that sort of comes from this example, right? So what I have here is a table with some names, and then I have another table where those names are present. Right? Nothing also, weird up to here. The only thing is, usually what we try to do in this situation, so we try to match things up, right? So we try to see which of the names that I have in my original table are present in my lookup table or in my second table, and vice versa, right? We try to kind of match and see what matches or what doesn't match up. And honestly, this is a big chunk of workload in almost any data analyst's workflow, right? You try to match things up and see what matches and what doesn't. And what you usually do, right? You'll have the two tables and you'll just say, match them up. But sometimes you'll get to data that looks kind of like this, right? And, even if I go back to this example just for a minute, this is interesting because if you look at John over here, right, there are two Johns actually, right? But I can see that John from Canada has two rows that match up to John, right, from Canada. So if you're thinking about Excel in terms of VLOOKUPs and things like that, if you do a VLOOKUP, what are you going to get? You're going to get the first one, right? Now, if you do XLOOKUP, you can say start from the bottom and you're going to get the second one, or not even the second one, because there's another John from Canada over here, right? There's a lot of them. So, and even one over here. So if you say start from the bottom up, you're going to get this one. But what about all the other Johns from Canada? And then you say, okay, so the lookup functions are not going to help me with this. So what can I do? And this is where Power Query comes in, right? This is where Power Query comes in. And what you say is something like this. So let's try to just go through the process. So in this case, we have the left and the right table, which are the main table, and this is the lookup table, right? So we're trying to find names over here in this table. And the way we do that is by simply doing joins, right? We say merge queries, and what you're actually doing is joining this query. So I'm going to merge these two. I'm going to say, here's a name, here's a customer. The column names don't have to be the same. And what I'm going to do is a left outer join. This is basically, and I would have to bite my tongue here, but I'm not gonna. This is basically your VLOOKUP, right? This is my main table, and this is the one I'm gonna attributed to. But if I just do this, right, there's a John from USA and there's a John from Canada. So I have to say, oh, but I have two conditions here and I have two conditions here. So already we're, passing the lookup functions significantly. But even if I do this, right, if I look at what's matching up, I can see that only 10 of 13 are matching up. Now, this can be due to some data really not existing, but either way, what I'm trying to show you here is the main thing that we're going to get with this is if I do this matchup and I look at John from Canada, which is over here, I can see that I can bring in all the data, all his data from my table, right? So here's the first reason why we do joins and why we do Power Query. It's because it can do so much more than just, your lookup functions in Excel. But saying that, so I could now just bring all of these out and see what I get, and I get something like this. And if I would now just go to John from Canada, like this, I would get something like this, right? So do you see how powerful this is? I get multiple answers to my matchup. But now things get kind of tricky, and they get tricky if I go to my next example, which is trying to match up these two. So again, I have the same names, and then I have the names over here, but now things are more, let's call them real life, right? Power Query is an ETL tool, and the T part is very important. It's a transformation part, and what it usually stands for, besides doing, all crazy transformations, what it usually stands for is doing cleanup, just simple cleanup. And over here, we can see that we have, we can see that we have Bob from our original table, but over here we have Bob, just, the same word, but it's a capital B on one side and it's just a small b on the other. And coming from the Excel world, this would not be a problem, right? It doesn't matter. The case doesn't matter, but in Power Query, which we saw why we would use it, it only makes sense to use Power Query here. But in Power Query, this becomes a problem because Power Query is case sensitive, right? And then this even goes kind of further than that. And it goes kind of further if we look at, let's say, Alan over here. And then you go look for Alan over here. And what you're going to find is there is an Alan, but it's also got an M next to it. So what is all this? Well, this is real life. This is real life where you say, okay, well, I got a bunch of things over here and I got a bunch of things over here, but they're not perfect. And I need to match them up. And, because Power Query is even more constricting than Excel in a sense that it's case sensitive, the kind of matchup becomes even harder, it seems. But now Power Query serves up a really good tool, and it's called fuzzy lookup. And let me just show you what fuzzy matching is all about. So if I take, these are the left and right from the from demo 5 of, this was my session on the Global Excel Summit, which you can go and check out. I invite you to, but long story short, I'm going to try to match up these two, right? And again, we can see we're going to have problems. So there's Bob over here, but the Bob over here is not the same. So if I just try to kind of do this, and I'm actually going to try to do it the other way around. So I'm going to try to say, match this with this, just to see how many, how many results we actually got. So I'm going to go merge queries. Oh, let me go merge queries as new, just so I can fiddle with which is the left and which is the right. And I'm going to go, this is my main table, and this is the one I'm actually trying to, match with it. And when I do the basic match, you can see that the selection only matches 11 out of 40 rows, right? Which is very, very bad, because the matching is only, the matching is bad because of the capital letters, because of, a first letter of the surname following the name. And can we, make that better? And yes, we can. So use fuzzy matching. That's what it's about. And once you go use fuzzy matching, I don't know if you even noticed it, but as soon as I said use fuzzy matching, this went to 21, right? Already a big difference. But now let's go like this. So I'm going to show you what fuzzy matching kind of does. And what it does is, the first thing is ignore case. So if it's a big one or a small, if it's a big B, capital B, or a small b, it doesn't matter, right? So that's the first thing I can do. And the second one is I can match by combining text parts. So I can say if there's an Allen and an Allen M, well, the Allen also is present over here. So these two should match up. And if I look at this kind of in that sense, it does match those up. But then I already have something here that is a similarity threshold. And with this, if I go low enough, if I go 0.1, you see, I can make this much better. Now, this requires a lot of testing and a lot of, fiddling, where you're going to go wrong and you're going to go back to it and change it up and see if it works better. But just basically straight out, sooner or later, you're going to find a number that works. So this is kind of a from 0 to a 1, right? And you can look at it as sort of a percentage that is required to match up, although it's not that, but still, you can look at it that way. And if I go 0.1, I can see that my matching just got better. But now I'm also in a world where things are kind of, never going to match up, because on the one side, I have the name, and on the other side, I could only have the initials. Now, if I just have the name here without the last name and only initials here, these two are never going to match up, right? So what we can do here is we can provide something that is called a transformation table. And a transformation table is basically something like this. So what you need is, you need your from column and you need your to column, right? And now it knows that Bob Umlaus, which is kind of what this represents, can be represented by BU. And now it knows that if it sees just the initials BU, that this is actually Bob, right? Oz de Soleil, there it is. And this is Oz. So the transformation table is kind of the last thing that you can do here to make it even better. So if I go and do that again and just show you by using this transformation table. So I'm going to go start with this one again, connect it to this one by doing the same thing. So now I'm at 11. Use fuzzy matching. I'm already at 21. Use fuzzy matching with a threshold of 0.1. I'm already at 27. And then I can say, well, and there's a transformation table I want you to use, and it's this one. And now I'm at 39. Right? So by using kind of everything that the fuzzy matching sort of brings to the table, I just made my matchups 300% better, right? From 11 to 39, well, almost 300%, which is amazing, right? Which is just brilliant. But this is going to work. This is going to work brilliantly. So BU is now Bob. Now let's have a different scenario, and this brings us to exactly what we're trying to do today. So the scenario now will be this. What we're trying to do here is slightly different than what we saw before, because before it was still, this was a name, and this was also a name, but it could include something else, or it could be slightly different, but it's still a name, right? And what you're doing here is you're doing kind of matching or partial matching, right? You know, Alan M, that is a partial match to Alan. Alan M is a partial match to Alan, or the other way around, however you want to look at it. And over here we have kind of an interesting situation where we have this, where we have kind of a longer text field and like a description. And what we would want to do is figure out if there are things that are present in the description, right? Now, already this, I'm guessing, you know, that the lookups are just, you know, straight off the table here. They're not even, you know, feasible. And with matching in Power Query, this also, you can do it well. Now you can do the partial matches, right? You can do the partial matches, but imagine if this was just slightly different scenario like we will have later on. Here we have description of certain vehicles, right? And what we would want to kind of get out is to get their attributes, right? So this is a vehicle. And what we would want to know is, does it have a diesel engine? How many doors does it have? Does it have chrome trimmings? What inch alloys does it have? Is it metallic color or just plain old color, right? And it's all in there. But if I would look by, let's say, partial matching, it still needs to be a match somewhere. But sometimes, you know, if I just go inch and it's in here and then over here it's inch, no joins will help me here, and even fuzzy matching will not help me here. But what we need is kind of fuzzy matching, right? It is kind of, well, if you find this is actually this scenario. So what we would want to do over here in the first one is just figure out this. We got some submissions by people basically telling us where they went, let's say, in the last year. Well, no one went anywhere in the last year, but let's just say in 2019. So where they went in 2019. And we got these submissions back. So it's an entire, you know, segment of text. And what we would want to do is, just by looking at this, figure out which of these cities that person went to, right? Did that person go to Rome? Did that person go to Paris? Did she go to, or he, to New York? Did he or she go to Ljubljana? You know, just Ljubljana is the capital of Slovenia, just education purposes. Because I'm guessing it's the only city on that list that you didn't know from before. Right, but just figuring out if that person went to Paris is not, no, you know, match this to this is going to help me. I need to kind of figure out, okay, well, Paris. So what I need to figure out is there Paris anywhere in here? And then, you know, Paris can be different things, right? It can be Paris like this. It can be Paris like this. So it's just depending on the way you write it. And then I would even say, if somebody says Eiffel Tower over here, well, I would say, well, if that is present, that also means that someone was in Paris, right? So I can just go and bring that down here. So if that one is present, that also means that someone was in Paris. And what you do here is, it's a kind of a Same table that we did before. You can think about this as a transformation table. And it's not just from to, but is, to this, and then from has multiple segments, right? So any of these that you see, just translate them to this, right? And here's where things get interesting. The transformation table in fuzzy matching still requires a match, right? So if you see this, then translate it to this. Whereas over here, this will still not be the entire, what is in that cell. That cell still has a lot of other text. It will just be partial matching. And so this will kind of be a very, very challenging thing to solve. And let's just do it. So for those of you who are actually thinking about following along, this is the file that you were sent before, and you can open it up and you can just follow along. So we're doing demo 1. And this is what we're going to do. So first we need to get this into our Power Query. So our Power Query needs to be familiarized with this. And since this is a table, I'm just going to look at the name of the table. It's called submissions. That's brilliant. And then this one is called possibilities, and that's also brilliant. So let's just go data. Let's go from table range. And this is how we got the original, so the descriptions in there. Right. And now what I would love to have is to sort of have each of those cities over here, like Rome, London, Paris, Ljubljana, and then for each of those, just let's say 1 if that person was actually in Ljubljana or in Rome or anywhere. Right? So just a column with 1s. Now, that's a long way off, but that is my end goal. That is what I'm trying to get to. And this is a kind of starting point. And now I will more or less just do a duplicate of this one. Now, for the second demo, we will do all this in a single query, but let's just do the first one really, everything. So the first one kind of says this: the source is Excel current workbook submissions. And we just looked at it before, but I might have forgotten. So I'm just going to go Excel current workbook just to be sure what the name was. It's called possibilities. So this table is the one that we're looking at. And let me just call that. Let's call it a lookup table like this. Okay, so this is the lookup table, and I'm just going to tweak it a bit. What I'm going to create is actually I'm going to kind of simulate the transformation table here. So I want all of these to kind of just be pairs. So just 2 columns with pairs of things that should match up. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm just going to right-click the first one, the first column, and I'm going to say unpivot other columns. So like this. Now, what I don't need is this. So I'm going to remove this one because it doesn't matter which position it was on. So Rome should be matched to this and to this and to this. This is actually in Slovenian. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to kind of, match up now. So this is what I'm going to be, this is actually what I'm going to be looking for in that original entire, array of text. And then if that matches, I want a column that says Rome and then a 1 in it. Okay, so let me go back to submissions. And let me try to make this kind of the best way, or at least as clear as we can. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the change type step, and we're going to rename that one. And we're going to rename that one to, let's rename it to base data. So that's my original base data. And now I need to do this. I need to bring the lookup table in here. right? So let's do that. Let's say, okay, well, this is cool. Now let's create a blank step and let's bring in like this, my lookup table. Like this. So now I have my original data and I have my lookup table, which right now is called custom. Let's change that. Let's just do lookup T, so lookup table like this, right? These are the two steps that I will now try to combine. Now, this is where things get kind of tricky. So let's do that. Because what we're trying to do here is we're still going, so look for this in here. But the thing is, it's not looking for a match. It's looking for a kind of a partial match. And sometimes not even that, right? So this is where things get tricky. And what we're actually going to use is a sort of a function, but you may not have been aware ever that this is a function. And let me just start off like this. Let me start off by saying, okay, so basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out if, let's say, Rome, spelled like this, is anywhere in here, right? And basically what you would do is you would kind of do a filter, right? You would say, well, what I'm looking for is Rome. Is Rome in there? Okay, so these two should kind of get Rome 1, 1, right? Now the only problem with this is, well, I'm not going to do this for each and every one of these, right? It would just take too long. So how are we going to do this? Let me just see something here. Let me miss this. Okay. Sorry for that. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Let me just bring this one out. And what we're going to use is kind of a filter, but a tricky filter. And let me actually back up. Let me go back to where we did have that filter set up. So filter was something like Rome, right? It was like this. And now, so the Rome kind of filtered this to these two submissions, right? But nowhere does it say that was actually Rome. So if I wanted that, I would actually need to do a partial matchup. And what I would do is I would do this. I would go back here. I would do a filter, but this would be a text filter. And what I would do is contains. And this will give us a text.contains. And let's go back to Rome. So let's do it like this. Right? And this one gives us something like this. It says, well, text.contains. What does it contain? Well, it contains in the submissions column, it contains the word Rome. Right? So this is the way filters work. But there's another interesting thing here. So the filter is table select rows. I'm going to select rows in the base data, which is where I'm doing this, which is my, previous step, just flat out if you do a filter, but you can use any step or any other query as your base data. And then it goes each. And this each is where things get interesting. This each actually means this is a function. And every filter is a function. Because what it does is for each member of the submissions column, it will try to do the text contains. Right? Now this is key. Filter is actually a function. Right? Now this is interesting because now I could say, oh, okay, well, if I'm already doing this, why wouldn't I just do something like this? And now let's try to create some magic. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here. And let me just check what that one did. Lookup table. Oh, we're going to need that one. So we're going to go new step. And this new step is going to be. So the first thing we would want to do is we would want to filter. But what filter what by? And here's where things get interesting. What we would want to do is this. For each submission, we would want to check if those values are in that submission, and then actually filter the second table and bring it next to this one as a new column. Right? So the way we start this is actually by saying table, column, add. Right? So, add column. So we're going to add a column to our table. Well, to which table are we going to add the column to? Right? Which is going to be our starting point, and it's going to be the base table. That's the one we're going to start with, right? It's going to be our base data, actually, in this case. So base data. I need to be more consistent with my names. There it is. So base data. That's the table I'm going to add a column to. Well, now what is that column actually going to do? Well, it still needs one parameter. So the first one is, what am I going to call this column? And let's call it, let's call it a custom, because those are never seen in Power BI or Power Query. So custom column, that's what a column is going to be called. It can be called anything because it's just going to hold tables, and then you're going to, expand those anyway. So the name doesn't really matter. But now what matters is what we do from here on out. And from here on out, we're going to go each, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to filter, right? So what are we going to filter? Well, we're still going to do table select rows, right? Oh, that went terribly wrong. So table select rows. There it is. So table select rows. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do a filter. Table select rows is just a filter, right? But what are we going to filter? Well, for each text in the base data table, we're going to go and filter the other table by, and this is where things get tricky, by what we partially match. And this is where we're kind of going to do it like this. So we're going to look at what we call the other one. We call it the lookup table. So we're going to say, go to the lookup table. So that will be our lookup T, like this. Okay. And then I want you to just select the rows from the lookup table that you can partially match to our base data, right? So what I'm going to do here is just say, let's call it BD, so base data, like this. And then I'm going to do this. Now this should blow your mind, because what I'm actually doing here is I'm creating a function to filter, but that's not really anything special, right? Because every filter is a function. It's just that this is a filter within a filter simulated by a function. And let's just write it till the end, see how it works, and then we're going to break it down a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to say text dot contains, right? And if we write it correctly, it will go like this. Now, why did I use text contains? Well, because I'm looking for a partial match. You just need to contain any of those words that I've written up there, right? So text contains, and then we go which text. Well, I think it's called submissions, like this, right? So go into the submissions text and then see if that one contains anything from D. And now this is a tricky part. Anything from where? Well, anything from the, and I'm going to call this BD, and I'm going to call this value. And let's see if this works. Now, this was a lot of, kind of manual work. So basically what I did here, over here, this is the heart of it, right? This is where I say, well, go through the submissions column and look for anything that is in the value column of whatever I'm bringing in here. And what am I bringing in here? Well, I'm bringing the lookup table, right? So what it's actually doing, it's taking the lookup table, it's taking the value column and searching for each one of these with the text contains within our base data. So within the submissions, right? And what I get is a table that says, oh, it doesn't say anything. We cannot convert a value of type record to type function. So where did this go wrong? This, like this, like this. Lookup table. This all seems right. So let's look at this again. So each table select rows, go for the lookup table, and then for each one of those, do a text contains on submissions. Submissions is right by looking at the value from that one. This seems like it should work. Table select rows. Table. So let me reiterate that. Let me go to this one and let me, because I was going through it previously and I have the whole code over here. That's why I was breaking my neck in between. And the code looks like this. Now let me just see if, so what's different here? Well, the first difference is it's SP, but it doesn't matter. The second difference is specs. So it's not called specs, it's called lookup T. So that will work. And then we got table select rows for each, but it's not a base table, but it's a base data like this. And it still doesn't work. Well, that's interesting. So we got the base data, that is a text, and over here we got text. So this should work. Description of the record wasn't found. Where did you say description? Oh, sorry, my bad. Submissions. There it is. And there it is. So it's so brilliant, it's hard to make it work, but let me just, so because this was going so fast and because you're following along, I'm actually going to paste this into the chat if I can find it. There it is, chat. And let me just paste this so that everyone has it. And then you can just copy paste it in here. So basically what you're saying is, again, the whole magic happens in here. And you can now compare it to my previous, just to see where it went wrong. I'm not really sure where it went wrong, but so go for the lookup table, right? And then just by taking, what this actually means is take the lookup table, right? That's, and call it SP. It's like wrapping it up in a variable, and then saying, now go for the submissions and see if the value column from this lookup table, if any of that is matching. But how does it match? Well, only by text contains. It shouldn't match one-to-one, just if it contains that text. That's what we're looking for, right? And then if I kind of bring this out and just say, I'm actually interested in the name only, right? So bring me the original name, right? So this first one, you can see this first one brings back Rome, Paris, and it actually brings up Paris 2 times. So this person is going to be in Paris 2 times, doesn't matter. You know, people can talk about a certain city multiple times because they love it. We're still going to fix that, or actually we're just going to make Paris still just a 1. But now let's do that. So what were we going for? Well, we were going for the original text over here, but only once, and then having columns, Rome, Paris, New York, Ljubljana, and London, and having the ones next to whichever was matched. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go add a column, custom column. And this is the most simple custom column you're ever going to add. You're just going to go 1 like this. And now we're going to take this one and we're going to say, let's pivot that one. Now we're going to pivot the name column, but our values are in the custom column. And if I would just leave this be as sum, what I would get is I would get 1s most of the time, but for Paris, for this first one, I would actually get a 2 because it would sum up these values. So I'm just going to go give me the maximum and go okay, right? And there it is, right? So for each submission, I can now see that which people were in Rome, which people were in Paris, and the same people could be in, both of those, right? So this is the idea. Again, we're doing partial matching within a huge block of text, which is much harder to cover by just merging, by joins, or by fuzzy matching. And now I'm going to load this because I'm going to share the file. So I'm just going to load this result. So I'm just going to create connections, but the result, which I'm thinking is this one, I'm going to load that one to a new, well, let's do it on this one. And let's call this demo 1 result. Like this. Okay. And maybe let's just save this up. And let's also create a much more pleasant table to the eye like this. Okay. So this is basically our end result, right? And now let's go to demo 2. So demo 2 will be kind of the ultimate. And this goes back to the beginning where I was saying that this whole experience, this whole example, and this whole talk is about something that I actually had to do within my line of work. And what I had to do was this. There was let's call it a seller that was creating a web page for the products that they were selling. So they were creating a web page for the products they were selling. Now the products, what they wanted to do on the web page was to kind of have those products, listed as this is the product, and these are the attributes of this product. So it's green, it's, any of those. Now, the problem they had is they didn't have product and then color green, or they didn't even have product green, yes, right? All that they had was they had a description of the product. And what they needed to do was go within the description and try to take out parts and say, okay, well, if this is in there, that means that it's actually, and what we got here is these are the descriptions of vehicles. And what we would want to do is to say, okay, well, if this vehicle has a TDI, so turbo diesel over here, then it's got a diesel engine. So it should say diesel, check, right? And then the problem is, but it could also say turbo diesel, right? So if it says any of that, then it's a diesel engine. And then you got the color. Is it metallic or is it just white? It's not metallic, but this one is metallic. And then you got the alloys, and then you got the number of doors. So this is a cube, so it's got only 3 doors, I guess. Yeah, it has 3 doors, whereas this one has 5 doors. But you can see here the 5 is a number, whereas here the 5 is written as text. So there are a lot of variations here, but what we would want to do is just create kind of our transformation table, again, in the fuzzy matching kind of, talk. Create the transformation table and let it run through all these descriptions and return, is a diesel engine present or or is it not? Right? That's what we would want. And I already prepared the table over here, but let me just go through so the idea would be this. So one of the attributes that I would want is this a diesel, right? And then I would say, well, this is the attribute, but what are my values? Well, value 1 that I would be looking for would definitely be TDI, whereas value 2 would be turbo diesel, right? And there could be multiple, right? Because one of the funny things is, with the files that we were working, they were by multiple manufacturers, and each one of those had their own way of, abbreviating things, combining things, and it was just you needed this table. You just needed this table, and what was also very evident was the shape of this table, where you kind of go wide, is much more simple than the translation table in any fuzzy matching would be, right? Because the translation table will say, well, diesel is TDI, but then diesel again can also be turbo diesel, but then diesel again can also be, you get the picture. It would just be so much more difficult to do. So what we did here is we ended up with something like this. Okay, so the 5-door can be like this or like this. The diesel is this or this, and so on and so on. So this is our table. Let's just grab it, bring it up, do the Alt key so we can switch it over here, and then do the control. So we do a copy like this. Right? This is the table we want. Okay. So there's another interesting one here, and maybe if we'll have the time, we'll actually do it. Because you see the diesel engine, that one is easy. That one just says, okay, so if it says TDI, then it's diesel. If it says turbo diesel, then it's diesel. But how do I know it's a gasoline engine? Well, this one is, but it just says 2.2 liter engine. Now, if I wrote engine here, right? If this description said TDI engine, then engine would not be enough for this to be gasoline. So I would need to somehow say, well, to realize that this is gasoline, I would actually need it to not be any of these, right? If it's not diesel, then it's gasoline. And that was also interesting. And it's kind of has to do with the text contains, right? Because text contains is a function that we used previously. So it's a text contains, and then we had a bunch of text that you were looking at in somewhere. But what we did was this: we did text contains and just said, well, look over here and look for this. What we didn't do is do an equals at the end, and you can. And that equals at the end is very important because that one can either be true or false. Yeah, you see where this is going? Because if it's true, it's exactly what we did before, and you can just submit that. But if it's false, then that one is what? Well, that one is actually, so I'm looking for those that are not containing any of these, right? And that one is, it's kind of brilliant to do. So let's just go for this one, and then we'll see if we have time to do the last one. So we're going to bring in this data. So we're going to say from table range, this, and I just realized I created a copy before, so that one just might be a problem. So let's do this. Let's do a duplicate of this one. Let's just do it the exact, oh no, actually let's do it differently than we did before, because I also promised you that we will. So let's do it like this. Let's go for our base table, which is this, and then let's copy the source, and let's just copy this part of it like this. Let's create a new, so we did this. Let's rename this into base. And then let's do a new step, which will only be Excel current workbook. And now I'm guessing our table we're looking for is specs 7. So it's this one. This is the original one. Yeah, this is the one we're looking for. So this is our table, and let's just do change type, and let's just call this specs. All right, so these are the specs that we're looking for. Or actually, let's not do that. Let's rename this to custom 17. And then let's do, remember before when we had this shape was no good. What we needed was on pivot other columns, we needed this shape, right? We needed diesel can either be this or diesel can be this. So we kind of constructed or deconstructed the transformation table out of this. And now that we have this transformation table, right? Now let's call this specs. Like this. Okay, so this is our base table. Let me just look at the way I did it before, so I'll be able to base table. So I call this base table, and let's do the same thing again. Let's call it base table. So if we run out of time, I can just copy paste the code for the gasoline engine. Okay, so now we have our base table, we have our specs, and what are we doing? Well, we're looking for the value. So whatever is over here, that's what we're looking for in here, right, in the description. So let's try to write that again. So this will kind of look like table at column. And we're trying to, that did not go as planned. There it is. So we're trying to add a column to which table? Well, it's just a step. It's the base table. So it's base table. Oh, I can see where this went wrong. Base table. Okay. So that's the step that we're trying to add columns to. Again, the next step, what is that column going to be called? I don't really care. It can be called custom 18. And then this is where things get kind of brilliant. So it's each, and now we have our function, right? So it's table dot select rows. Okay, that looks good. So we're going to go through the specs table. And so we're trying to get the original, get the description, and now from the specs table, just take those items that were matched. So those are the attributes that this product should receive, right? So go for the specs table, and then let's call it like this so it will work. So the specs table, and then we do table on, text dot contains. Okay. And what are we doing? Well, we're going through the description, right? So the description column within our base table, the description of this vehicle. And what are we looking for in the description? Well, what we're looking for in the description is from our SP, which is the specs table. We're just trying to take out the value. Right, so this value, this is what we're looking for in our original table. So now let's see if this matches up. So this one closes up text contains, this one closes up text select, this one closes up this, and this should work. And again, it doesn't. SP, specs, text contains. I have to go to this again. And I have no idea. This is because I changed the, because I was changing the regional settings just before going on, and I have no idea if this just messed everything up. And again, I'm going to paste this to the, but it, as far as I'm concerned, is the same as I've written. So like this. Okay, so what do we get? All right, we got our column. It's now called custom. It's not called custom 18 because I pasted over it, but we now got a column that says, well, in this description, I went through the specs table and these are the ones that I could match up. All right. These are the ones that I can match up. And so this first car, we actually know now that it's got a metallic color. It's a diesel. It's got 5 doors. It's got 18-inch alloys, and it's got chrome, and it's a 1.5 liter engine. Okay? So these are the attributes that we got for the first one. And the second one we got, well, it's a 3-door. It's got a 21-inch alloy, and it's a 2.2 liter engine. But remember from before when I said, okay, so this is cool, but this is a so let's just bring all of those column 1 out. So these are the attributes that we got for each of those, right? And what we would want is preferably, as we did with the previous example, we would want, well, give me Rome and then give me ones, or over here we'll just do give me metallic color and then do an X if there is metallic color or not. But what we don't have here is we don't have our what we don't have is our gasoline engine. So, right, if we look at this one is incredibly short. It's only got 3 attributes, and the attribute that is missing is definitely the okay. It's not got the. It doesn't have the color attribute, and it doesn't have the engine attribute, and we would want to fix that. So what we would want to do is go and check this again, but this time differently. And I'm just gonna copy paste this again because it seems that is much easier, right? So this one is almost the same. It's almost the same. It says, okay, go to the base table, right? The same base table. Create a column that you call custom. It doesn't matter. And then for each table select row, so right, it's a filter. Go through the gasoline specs. Oh, and this is the only thing that it's missing now. I don't have the gasoline specs, so let's do that. Let's do this. So let's go back to the specs. So let's go a blank new step, and let's say start with specs. And the only thing I need is the diesel specs, right? So these are the only ones I need. And let me just call this, I'm going to call this gasoline specs. Was that the way it was called? Gasoline specs, yeah. So let's call this table like so. And now let's see if we still have it in here. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so this is where things get interesting, right? So in the base table, go through the gasoline specs. So it's just the 2 rows, right? And see if they're contained in the description. But do you see how I change it up? I said text contains equals false, right? So this function is going to create a new column that will have a subset from the original table. And that subset will only have those that are not contained within this subset. Now, it's too early to be extremely happy about this because we're going to see that it kind of works, but it doesn't. So in the original table, we get both of these. So both of these are not present in this one. And that is cool, right? If both are not present, then we know it's a gasoline. But the problem is, what does this one do? Well, this one says this one is not present. And why is this one not present? Well, because the first one has a TDI. It's still not a diesel, but it doesn't have only one of those two, right? So what I would need to do is this. I would need to go through this one and say, okay, what I want you to do is to count up a number of values that are within the column. And I would get 2, and let's call this my count, right? And then if I look at this again, and let's see where this went all wrong, base table each, yeah, this one. So what this should be is gasoline specs. There it is. So I would now need to do this. I would need to just count how many rows I got back. And I do that by just saying aggregate and do a count of value. I don't need anything else, right? And now I see that the first one got 1, 2, and 1. And which one has the gasoline engine? Well, it's only the one that got 2 here, right? So what I need to do is I need to create a custom column by simply saying if this equals my count, right? It's the one that I did. Yes. And I only need the true ones like this. Now I have no need for these two. And now let's just see what we're going to add. So we have the custom free custom. So this is the last one. So we have column 1, and it actually says what it is. So we're just going to do this. And we know that this description just needs one thing added. And the thing that needs to be added is this. So we're going to do a custom column. We're going to call it custom 1. And what's it going to say? It's going to say gasoline. Like this. Okay. So let's just see if we are on par. Custom 2 says, no, expanded custom says column 1. Yeah. So let's rename this one to start. Let's call this one addition. And now we'll just do a new step, which will simply be a table.combine of. So take the start and add the addition. This like this. There they are, right? Oh, and custom 1 is not column 1, obviously. So let's do column 1. Like this. Right? So now we have this car also gets the attribute gasoline. And this time we did the fuzzy matching, we did the function, it did the whole thing, but we just went with the equals false in the end, right? And now the only thing I need to do is to add a column, a custom column. That's much better. We will do the X thing, this, and now we're going to pivot this one by choosing the custom as values. And what I definitely don't want is to count. I'm just going to say don't aggregate. Go like this, right? And now for each of the cars, I have the attributes. Does it have metallic color? This one does, this one does, this one does not. Does it have a diesel engine? This one does, this one does, this one does not. Whereas in the end, somewhere, does it have a gasoline engine? Yes, it does, right? And it's a 2.2, whereas this one is a 2.0. And somewhere over here, this one is a 1.5, right? So what we did, and let me just close and load this up, is we managed to so it's this one. Let's load it to, oh, it was only one. I could have loaded directly. Okay, right. So this is our end result. And I think we all agree this is one of the most brilliant things we've ever seen, particularly because of the the complexness of what it does, right? It takes the description and it kind of distributes it down to attributes, and it's a really brilliant thing. And what it does is it's simulating fuzzy matching in a way, right? Because fuzzy matching has a partial match and it has the transformation table. The only thing is that transformation table is a direct match. Whereas here you say, well, this just needs to be a partial match, or it needs to be in there. And then you can also go, well, it can be a false of a partial match, and then I know it gets an attribute, which we did with the gasoline, and that kind of just brings it up to a whole new level, right? So this really one of the best techniques, or one of the greatest techniques you can use. And I'm just going to call this demo 2 result, and you're going to get these files later on. Okay, so without further ado, let's just go to Q&A.
So we haven't received any questions so far.
Really?
Yeah, the audience seem interested in knowing more about you. So they would love to know about your MVP journey and how it all started and how is it going so far.
Okay. Well, MVP journey.
Yeah.
I guess it started in Amsterdam, like most things do, right? So I went to the Amsterdam Excel Summit, which is kind of a child of Jan Carl Piltje and Jan Carl Pietersy and Tony Jonker. So they do this conference every year, except if it's a COVID year. In Amsterdam, it's called the Amsterdam Excel Summit, and it's, at that point, and this was way back in, I think, 2014, I guess, when the conference started. That was the only place that you could actually get in touch with these people. And it's funny how the world changed, right? So I'm now speaking to you, and I don't know if that was even available back then, if you could get in touch with those people so easily, right? Each and every member of this chat or this webinar can now talk to me. And not that I think that I'm any, of any importance, but at that point, you could only get to people like John Peltier, Ken Poles, Jan Carl Pietersy, and Bob Umlas was also there, and Tony. And, you could only get to those people if you went to Amsterdam to that conference. And being there was kind of just, that feeling when you walk into a room and they're like, everyone is your people, right? So I don't even know what that can be compared to, but in geek terms, it's like you can actually talk to somebody about your favorite Excel function and it doesn't sound weird and nobody makes fun of you or something like that. And it was one of the best things. Now, at that point, my blog was already a thing. And, so by the time the MVP came, I think it was 1 year later or 2 years later. And then I went, the funny thing is, then I went to the Amsterdam Excel Summit as a speaker, which was also funny, as an MVP for the first time. Yeah. And, I just love these people. I love Boriana. I love Ken. I love hanging out with these people because it's, and the journey it takes you on, being an MVP, right? I come from Slovenia. It's a very small country. It's got 2 million people. It's got the word love in it, but it's very hard to find on the map. But in 2019, I was a speaker in Australia, right? At Liam's conference. And that just blew my mind when I was traveling 36 hours with 4 plane rides to go to Australia and to to be a speaker in Brisbane, in Melbourne, in Sydney, in Perth, it was just amazing. And it's kind of what MVP gives you. It's not just the title, the awareness or anything, or the things you get from Microsoft or anything like that. It's more or less being able to hang out with these people that really takes it from me. And just when we got to Perth in Australia, and this is a funny story, when we got to Perth in Australia, I only had the hotel booked for 3 nights, and I knew that I'm going to stay for the 4th night. And I just thought, when we get there, I'll just ask for the room. It doesn't matter. And when we got there, it turns out it was the biggest rugby match of, the year or the century or whatever. It was Australia against New Zealand. And they really take that seriously over there. So when there's a rugby match, there was no hotel room for me to get. So I was kind of homeless in Perth. And a fellow MVP, Win, just took me, into his house with really knowing me. Okay, he knew me from before, but not really knowing much about me else than that I was part of that conference and that I was an Excel MVP. And to me, that speaks volumes to the MVP community and to what it means to be an MVP. And I was so looking forward to inviting him to Slovenia and then letting him crash on my floor or my couch just for 1 night, just so to repay him. But then the whole COVID thing happened. Okay, that was a very long answer, but being an MVP is awesome. Let's just call it like that.
True, sir. It's amazing to hear that. So, would you like to share about your upcoming courses or any of your courses to our audience?
Well, the funny thing is, I only have a couple of courses that are actually public, open to the public, and those are all in Slovenian.
Okay.
So at this point, no.
Okay.
But there will be a video
issues,
course
sir.
coming out.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being a part of our session.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. We would love to hear from you very soon again.
Okay.
And thank you, audience. Thank you, participants, for being here with us on our session. A few announcements for our participants. Our upcoming Fresh Talk. So here are a few of our upcoming Fresh Talks. On 19th March, Building Interactive Dashboards by Dr. Karpagam T. And on 9th April, M-Code Recipes, Achieve More with Power Query by Ms. Celia Alves, who's also an MVP. And thank you. Do like, share, and comment if you have enjoyed this session. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more updates. Thank you. Stay tuned for more Fresh Talks. Happy weekend. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.